Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar, Creating and Sustaining a Caring Culture in After-School and Summer Programs. We have an amazing panel of experts from Harmony SEL, LA's Best, and Wings for Kids here to help lead this discussion on infusing social and emotional learning into organizational culture. Before I pass it off to our moderator, we have a few housekeeping notes to help make the most of your time here and make sure everything runs smoothly. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all participants along with the slides and resources that you see here today. Feel free to interact with us on chat. Just make sure that your chat setting is set to everyone so that we can all engage with your questions and comments. And with that said, I'd like to pass it off to our moderator, Lauren Puzin from National University.
So, who to hear from it best than the people who are deeply engaged in making these changes and efforts across organizations, programs, and sites. Without further ado, I will introduce you to our presenters and panelists for today. We have an incredible set of individuals here with us today. You can see we have Jaco from Harmony SEL at National University, my colleague and great teammate. Daniel from LA's Best, thrilled to have him here and a partner of ours as well. Katie and Mallory from Wings for Kids. Thanks so much. You can read shortly in the chat their bios about how incredible these individuals are and the work that they do to make a difference. So I'm going to pass on the mic to Jaco to get us started into this deep conversation about creating and sustaining a caring culture in after-school and summer programs. Jaco, on to you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Awesome, awesome. Hi, everyone. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Jaco. I am a Philly girl, fly Eagles fly, still smarting a little bit, who is based in Brooklyn, New York, on the planet Brooklyn. So when I think, no one asked me, but I'm just going to say it. When I think about culture, I think about the things that are special about any particular space, right? Any space has a culture. A class has a culture. A city has a culture. A state has a culture. And so what is it? It's those things we do that are unique to us, right? So as you were thinking about the students or children or adults or parents that you're with, what do you do together that make your space your culture, those things that you do when you get to that space? And so I am a professional learning specialist with Harmony, and we have certain SEL, social emotional learning activities and strategies that we do. And so one of them is the names chant. And I'm going to actually take a risk, and I'm going to volunteer someone to do it with me. Here's the names chant. This is something that we do. And I'm going to pick, who am I going to pick? I'm actually going to pick Martha to do it with me, L. And so this is one of the things that we do. We have L. L is here today. Here is what L wants to say. And L is going to say anything she wants.
This is Elle, and I am so excited to be in Georgia where it's warm.
Awesome, Elle. Thank you so much. Even things like that are so super small that make a culture a culture. Next slide, please. And so I just want to share with you a couple of activities and things that we do at Harmony to help with social emotional learning. We understand social emotional learning to be managing emotions, empathy, understanding other people's emotions, right? Self-regulation, those things that help us to be in good relationship with other people. And we know that as you go into adulthood, we are going to be in all kinds of relationships with other people. And we want our children to be healthy, have healthy relationships, know how to sustain them, maintain them, and be comfortable in their own skin. Next slide, please. So what we do know, and you know this as a working adult, there are lots of skills that are needed in the workplace. And this slide actually demonstrates a study that was done by the Economist Group of what the most important and desired skills are in any industry. And two, look at the top two. Does it say Excel spreadsheet skills? Does it say knowing how to use Microsoft Word? Those things are important, but what's more important are your skills, your what they call soft skills, but we know they're more important. Do you know how to think? Do you know how to problem solve? Do you know how to work with others? And these are the things that we are working, next slide, please. These are the things that we are working with children on. Now, we don't want to start when they're 12 years old. We want to start when they're young, right? We want to get them while they're young so they can practice these skills and be comfortable with them as they are older. The reason that I wanted to show this slide is this. Did you know that out of school time was actually in the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention? Did you know that out of school time, that is before school and after school, that is known as, this shocked me. I don't know, maybe you guys knew this, I didn't know, that being a part of an out of school time program has a positive effect on student health. So what you are doing is actually not just impacting their academic health, but their academic skills, but also their being healthy inside, their heart, their mind, their emotions. So you have a yeoman's job, but know that you are doing something that's going to help them later in life. Next slide, please. So as we do this, and I'm just sharing a little bit of what we do at Harmony, we have practices that, everyday practices that our teachers and our organizations like the Y and Best Buddies and Boys and Girls Club, they do Harmony Goals, Meet Up, Buddy Up to get the children to flex their SEL muscles. And there are also lessons that we have pre-made too. Next slide, please. So I like using analogies, right? And so when you think about SEL skills, think about exercise. I'm always thinking about exercise because I need to do more all the time. Let's say you haven't exercised in a really long time and you decide tomorrow is the first day of the rest of my life, right? I'm going to go exercise. And I haven't exercised in 5 months. And I think tomorrow I'm going to do CrossFit. I'm going to do a boot camp. Maybe not, right? Maybe you should slow down a little bit and do something like go outside and take a 15-minute walk, right? That's what these activities help us to do. So something like Meetup is where you community build. All of the children get in a circle. They greet one another. They share something about what's going on in their lives. And then the children respond to that. So every child has an opportunity to get the spotlight and share what's on their heart, what's going on in their lives. Does that make sense? So we can fold this into the routines and the rituals, next slide, that we already have and are already doing. Next slide, please. So this is the one, you can skip that one. So Buddy Up is an opportunity as well, where children get an opportunity to just do one-on-ones with each other. Next slide. Have a conversation with one another or do a quick activity together with one another. We have these quick connection cards that you pull it or the kids pull it and they can have like a 5-minute conversation, like what would you be surprised to find in your room? Or they can do an activity like mirror, mirror. One person is the actor. Have you ever done that before? One person is the actor and the other person has to play the mirror. So we have, again, these activities are like your 15-minute walk around the neighborhood. It's just an opportunity to be consistent and to build, next slide, build activities that make up your culture of your classroom. Does that make sense? We always can use, I'm a former classroom teacher, 5th grade and 3rd grade classroom teacher in New York City, DOE. And one thing that we never rejected were activities and things to do, right? If there was a card that we could use, if there was an activity that was already done, yes, bring it, give it to me, absolutely. And so I want you to think as I'm about to close out, I want you to think about I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to put the Harmony online learning portal in the chat. All of our materials are free, right? Free. And so when you think about our out of school time, you have, I think, because I'm always thinking with my teacher hat on, you want a robust kind of activity opportunity, if you will. Now I'm getting tongue-tied, Lauren. A robust activity, a toolkit, if you will. And so our out of school time toolkit is robust. It's not just little activities, it's lessons, it's themes, it's very intentional. Does that make sense? Next slide. And so we know that what you are doing in after school comes alongside what goes on in school, right? And it also helps to make a home school connection. So as you think about what you're doing and its impact, I would encourage you to be thoughtful. I would encourage you to be mindful and intentional and pro-social. And so we're happy to share our information, and some of our slides are going to come with you afterwards. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have. And when we get to the panel discussion, feel free to dig deeper, ask more questions of us so we can give you a more, next slide, a more robust understanding of what we do. And also, feel free to go on to the Harmony online learning portal to get more ways and techniques and tools. You can never have too many tools in your tool belt, especially as it relates to our children and preparing them for life and to be good people and good citizens and contribute in a productive way to our society. I think that's the last slide. I want to say, we have always, more professional ways to support you. Next slide. I think this is the thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to me. We're really passionate, as you can tell. I know people are like, oh, they're so passionate about it, but we really are. We're really into kids. We're really into not kids for the moment, but kids for the future. So thank you so much for listening. Write out your questions for the panel that's coming up later, and I'm going to pass this over to Daniel. Daniel, you ready?
Yes. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Monteroso. I'm with LA's Best After-School Enrichment Program here in Los Angeles, primarily in LAUSD. And so SEL, how do we make it part of our culture? Here at LA's Best, when we talk about SEL, we consider ourselves a trauma-informed organization. So social and emotional learning is something that we hold dear and near to our hearts as an organization. And one of the strategies, or one of the things that we really prioritize when we talk about anything that we're trying to implement, is trying to figure out how to make sure it's going to last. And so one of the things that we did, for example, with a resource like Harmony, was we made sure that when we started using Harmony, we always look for resources that are easy to use, adaptable, but also flexible. It's real important for us that when we use, as an organization, taking on resources, we want to take on things and use things and make things available for our staff that don't require necessarily a curriculum necessarily, but also allows them to be to customize it and use it at the dosage that they feel comfortable, to make it their own, to make it useful for their kids and make it fun. We've been approached in the past, and we've seen other resources where they're very, very true and very adamant about holding true to the validity of the curriculum or of the resource or the packaging or the activities. Most of the time, we stray away from those kind of things. We like to be able to give our staff the autonomy to make things their own. And so when we're talking about social emotional learning, using resources like that and the strategy of the same of, we don't force social and emotional learning to our staff. I like to see social and emotional learning as really just kind of the reminder of us caring about our kids and really taking the time to not take for granted the impact of the little interactions, of the facial expressions, of the little moments throughout the day, the impact that it has on our students, the impact that our students have on us as staff, and the impact that they have on each other. And so social and emotional learning, a lot of people, probably saw that and, thought, oh, well, that's not news. We're all naturally social. That, that comes with being human. But what it does, I think, for us is, again, it just kind of reminds us to really not take for granted those little moments and those skill sets that a lot of times when ignored, don't get developed. And, we grow up to be, not maybe the most ideal adults. And also, it's hard for us, as Jacob was sharing, around the skill set that organizations look for, and not have those skill sets of teamwork and collaboration. So at LA's Best, what we've done is we always try to make sure that, again, we don't force social and emotional learning, but rather we figure out ways to slowly integrate it. And we always start small in dosage as well. When it came to something like Harmony or just practice social and emotional learning throughout the day, we always present it as a resource rather than a requirement. And I think that's super key and important to allowing or making something part of your culture. Culture comes natural. Culture is your everyday. Culture is more of your routines and your rituals. It's less often those spontaneous spark, high energy moments or those high peaks. And it's more just kind of the everyday of who we are. It involves and it takes special moments, but it's not always, again, the high peaks. So when we talk about social and emotional learning, what we did was we made sure that we didn't make it a high peak or oversell it or over amplify it as something that was going to be the greatest new invention, the new discovery. And we also made sure not to make it a requirement, but rather as a resource. We tried to ensure that our staff understood and were sold on the idea of the benefit of social and emotional learning for them as staff, and also the benefit that I would have on our students as well. One of the ways that we did that was with resources like Harmony, where they saw it as a resource in their head as a staff. That's just another list of activities that I can pull from, versus here's a bunch of activities that I have to do. And as I'm sure in your programming, activity planning time or planning time it might be rare. And a lot of times, you have either current new staff or veteran staff who are either struggling to find ideas or running out of ideas. So when you come to them with a resource and you say, hey, here's a bunch of cool activities that are easy to use. A lot of them don't require materials. A lot of them can be done on, with little to no facilitation or guidance from staff. They see that as a benefit. And then you add on top of that the layer that they also allow you to practice social and emotional skills, and the consistent use of these materials will result in, hopefully more positive interactions between students, more positive interactions between students and staff, and vice versa. And so those are the couple of things that I think are strategic into ensuring that, one, you're successful with implementing social and emotional learning in your program, but also successful in making it part of your culture. One is, don't make it a requirement. Two, don't oversell it. Keep it simple, keep it what it is, integrate it slowly, naturally into your programming. And three, ensure that that is seen as a resource and as a benefit rather than a requirement. At LA's Best, we've done that in a couple of different ways, in addition to using resources like Harmony. One of them is the integration at all levels. So, whatever, you want to try to implement at your site, as I'm sure many of you know, it's important to also practice at the top. And so when we talk about social and emotional learning, those are all things that as adults and as a leadership staff here at LA's Best, we try to integrate in not only our daily meetings centrally, but also in all of our professional development opportunities or trainings that we have. So all of our trainings have some level of social and emotional learning practice or activity, whether it be the actual use of Harmony cards or grounding exercises or breathing exercises or meditating. Those are all things that we integrate as adults and practice as adults as well, whether the students are around or not. And what that allows you to do is, one, it allows your staff to not only see that you as an organization are really actually bought into this, and it's not something that you're just trying to force them to do, but two, it allows them to see it in practice and in action and what it could look like. And it allows them also to see the benefits for themselves that it has on them as adults and as employees in your organization. And so those are the couple of things that we've done to try to ensure that social and emotional learning doesn't become just a fad, that it doesn't become just the one thing that's hot right now and then something else is going to come later, that it really becomes, we really try to break it down and get to the core of it all and see it for what it really is, and not trying to make it something that it's not. And when you do that, I think a lot of staff not only appreciate the genuosity of it all, but also appreciate the fact that you're allowing them to explore it for themselves, and discover it at their own pace, the same way we want our students to do it. This is not a doctrine that we're trying to sell, that we're trying to implement. This is just something that we see as a resource and as a benefit for us as adults, but also our students. I'm going to go ahead now and pass it out to Katie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daniel. My name is Katie, and I'm here with my colleague, Mallory, and we are with Wings for Kids. And for those of you not familiar with Wings, we have our vision on the screen, and we work to achieve this vision in a variety of ways, including operating regional programs centered around social emotional skill building. We empower others with SEL best practices through professional development, workshops, and resources. And we also partner with like-minded organizations to scale effective SEL initiatives across the country. So we are thrilled to be a part of today's workshop. And like we've heard already, these social emotional skills are critical for our students' success. And in order for students to learn these vital life skills that will help them to become valuable contributors to our society, this work must begin with the adult leaders who are engaging with our students. Adults who are working with our youth must seize every opportunity they can to teach social emotional skill building. And one way to ensure this happens is through the use of a common language around SEL. And on the next slide, we have the common language of Wings centered around social emotional skill building. And this is our words to live by. It's something that we use with our students, our peers, our families, really everyone in the community, because it's truly the heart of Wings. You can definitely feel free to use this, but by no means do you have to. We do just highly suggest that every organization has a common language around SEL. A common language helps to ensure that all students are receiving the same messaging around social emotional skill sets, no matter what adult they engage with, and it helps to make these conversations more effective. SEL can't be something that's done for 10 minutes a day, once a week. It has to be integrated into every interaction we have with our students, and repetition and consistency are key. A common language helps with all of this. We can click again and we see how the words to live by breaks down this complex topic of SEL into a more youth-friendly, easy to understand language that's also easy for the adults to incorporate in their everyday interactions. So something as simple as changing a typical question of, did you have a good day today? And that elicits that yes or no response into a more SEL thought-driven question like, what emotion did you feel today? Can help us engage our youth further in a conversation and direct that conversation around SE skill building. And for that example, that was all around building those self-awareness skills. And we can click again. So SEL not only helps students pay attention in class or work collaboratively on a group project, these skills are also essential in the workplace and provide a roadmap for growth and life satisfaction into adulthood. By teaching these competencies to young people, we're planting the seeds for creating a more just, caring, and equitable future. Even for adults, developing these skills and displaying these skills is no easy feat, right? This is a complex topic, and it's not going to be accomplished in just one professional development training or one book that we read. It has to be intentional, ongoing efforts for improvement to happen. It's often something that's overlooked because there's so many other tasks and deadlines that we have going on any given day. And, it's not just something we can kind of check off our to-do list. Like Daniel discussed earlier, it's ongoing efforts that we have got to role model for our students. So we can head to the next slide and we'll see at Wings some of the best practices that we have to ensure that adults are role modeling these skills. And first and foremost, it's hiring candidates that believe in our vision that we saw earlier, and that really helps to increase the buy-in. We also have a very in-depth beginning of the year training, but that can't be just the end-all be-all. Our sites also have staff meetings 2 to 3 times a week with adult SE skill building integrated throughout these. We have ongoing trainings with the teams around the social emotional skill sets, and we base our program assessments and observations on the social emotional skills. Another part of these ongoing efforts to build SE skill sets in the adults means holding them accountable for living them. So one way we do that at Wings is by providing consistent feedback around these skills. And these skills are a part of everyone on the team's evaluations. We, as the leaders of our youth, must intentionally model these skills for our students. We can't expect our students to be doing something that we ourselves are not doing. So for example, expecting our students to stay calm under stress when they've just seen us lose our cool because of a last-minute deadline announcement. Next slide. It's really important to remember that we as the adults are role modeling these skills, whether intentional or not. So we can role model how to control ourselves in a difficult situation, or we can model how to lose it under stress. Either way, students are learning from our behaviors, and we'd rather them be soaking in those social emotional skill sets. Mallory is going to discuss further how to create this SEL culture and climate with stakeholders, families, and partners.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everyone again for joining us. As Katie mentioned, it's very important for us to have the right staff in place to really do all we can to really immerse the staff in our culture. It's important for us to have that common language, but it's also important for us to create that environment. And when we're talking about creating that environment, that's really understanding what type of environment do you want to say your students are a part of, that your families are a part of, that your community can speak on for your organization. And the first thing to really keep in mind when thinking about that environment is understanding that we're one team with one goal, that whatever that goal may be for your organization, but understanding that the overall goal is just the growth and development of our students, to get them to be the best versions of themselves. And that everyone on the team, whether that's staff, whether that's parents, whether that's stakeholders, other community members, they all play a part in helping those students with that goal, whether it's their physical development, their mental development, academic development, social development, emotional development. We all have that one goal of just seeing our students succeed. And it's important that while we're doing that, we're trying to create this family vibe, this culture, this atmosphere that's high energy. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody feels supported. Everybody feels valued. And so that's really taking the time to get to know each other. And I'm sure all of us can think about, within our own families, there are times we may agree on things. There are times we may disagree. We may have certain family members we may not like, but the heart of everything that we're doing is for our kids and their future and their success. And so really understanding how can we all come together to create that vibe, understanding that it takes a village to raise our students and help them succeed. And then ultimately understanding what are the benefits? How does this program, how is my organization, how is my classroom benefiting my student? What do my staff see as the benefits of this organization? What do the stakeholders see as the benefit? Getting them to understand the why, getting them to understand the importance of it. So it's not just an after school program. It's not just a summer program. It's not just, oh, I need somebody to watch my children, but it's really getting them to understand, okay, well, how does my child participating in this program, learning these skills, helping them to develop? How is it helping me? How is my work that I input into this organization helping? So go to the next slide, and we'll see one of the ways that we do this is with our family engagement. And it's really important to really just understand and get to know your families. And when we're talking about this, we're meaning building that rapport, creating those trust and relationships with them, and not just learning about them. So those demographics, this is the community I'm working in, these are the numbers, number of single home families, but really getting to learn from your families. So reaching out to your families and learning more about them and their experiences, inviting them into your programs, into your organizations to teach other people. A lot of things that we do in our program is things like family events. So we host different family events throughout the year, and the way we come up with those ideas from family events is from the input of our families and our students. What type of events do they like to see? We know, for one, our parents like to see their students performing. So that's one way that we can do it. Other things may be sending out newsletters to families so they can see what it is that you're learning in your program. So they know, okay, this week we may be teaching this particular skill, and this is something that they can do at home to reinforce it. So that may include some at-home family activities, that may include some student spotlights. We do check-ins with our families, so just to see how they're overall doing, what's going on, is there any support that they may need for us? Is there any resources they may need to provide for them? So we try to provide our families with different resources, and resources may include things to fix immediate situations or problems that they may have, but then also providing them opportunities to learn how to be more independent, how to sustain more as a family. Other things that we do is just inviting our family into the program, whether that may be volunteering, whether that may be just coming to hang out to see what their students are doing, but just making them as much a part of the program as possible so students can see that their families are engaged in our program as well. They see that we're working together to help them. They see that we're all on this same goal, working through these same efforts. Go to the next slide. Another way that we do this is with our stakeholder relationships. And so one of the key things for us here is really just identifying who those stakeholders are, whether that's teachers, whether that's community partners, whether that's the family members, whoever, the bus drivers, those people that play a part and a role in our students' life, identifying those stakeholders, and then just finding different ways that we can work together again to achieve that common goal and help the students to see that we're all here to help them. We all care about their growth and development, and we all want to see them succeed. And what our role and responsibility is in doing that may look different, but how can we work together to do that? And so for us, one thing that we do is we have advisory boards in our programs, and our advisory boards consist of a family, a family member, a student, a teacher, a staff member from our program, and also a community partner. And those are the different stakeholders. We bring them together. We meet throughout the year just for everybody to provide their input about the program, their feedback about the program, so we can hear from all of the different people and come up with common goals together. We do teacher appreciation. So we work with our staff to do things to just recognize the teachers that our students are with during the school day and how we can acknowledge them and their efforts and what they're doing. We send out what we're learning emails and news blasts to our stakeholders so they see what it is we're learning in the program. We just find different ways, whether that's attending a PTA, partnering with a school collaborative event, so that we can all work together and see what each other is doing. And those are just the many different ways. For every organization, for every program, it's different because we're working with different stakeholders, and you're working in different capacities, but really just identifying the ways that you can bridge those gaps so students can see us all working together and overall working towards that culture of social and emotional learning. Next slide, please. So this is just a way you guys can connect with us, my information, Katie's information, and then QR code to go to our page just to learn more about us. There's plenty about what we do, why we do it, how we do it, some resources and different things that you can pull from if you're just looking for different ways to bring social and emotional learning with your students, your staff, or your families. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mallory, Katie, Daniel, Yako. What a phenomenal discussion that you set up for us. And there's so many, I was vigorously writing notes about all the amazing things that you were sharing. I have the very difficult job of moderating this discussion and trying to get us to dig deeper when you all just provided such incredible information about the ways that you're working to integrate social emotional learning into your culture. So I'm going to start with a question actually for Yako. Heading back to you, I'd love to hear a little bit about what implementation strategies you've seen or heard from partners that you work with that have been most successful in getting buy-in from staff? So kind of that early stage of, if we are going to call it something big, or maybe we're going to, let's use the words of Daniel, we're not going to oversell this. We're going to start it small. What are the different ways that you've seen programs get buy-in from their stakeholders?
All right. Thank you, Lauren. So lots of different ways, right? To me, again, as a former classroom teacher, buy-in it's a thing, it's real, right? It's something that people who face students and children must think about, right, and deal with, but it's subjective to the particular group, right? So my buy-in for my kids might not be your buy-in for your kids. So what I hear when I talk to teachers, and I always try to get them to, and counselors and people that work for the Y, they really, really use what they have observed with the children, right, first. So they tend to tell me about the observations, like, I know that Johnny likes music, so I know a couple kids like music, so I'm going to use music as my lead-in to the activity of what we're about to do. Or I know that well, we all know that all kids like technology, right? So I may use a video to lead in. But the truth of the matter is, Lauren, I really also feel that your belief system is important for buy-in. Like, do you really believe that SEL is something that is useful and valuable? Everyone today has talked about the being SEL as a vehicle for lots of other now I'm tongue-tied, Lauren. Did you give me the bug? Lots of other, a segue, if you will, to lots of other pathways of success in life. And so the teachers, Joe, to answer your question, the teachers say that the first thing they do is use observational techniques to find out what their kids are into, what they like, the language, and then they use that as the segue to introduce whatever it is they're going to introduce. Does that make sense? And then they also use routines, rituals, and part of the culture for wherever you is. Like for New York City, you know, this is just the truth. You can't be corny in New York City, right? So don't bring anything that's going to be like, where the kids are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is corny or something like that, right? You need to be cool. You need to be with it. Does that make sense? And so all of that, we're laughing about it, but it's the truth of the matter, right? We need to be in touch. The teachers need to be in touch with where the kids are and where to meet them and how to meet them. I hope that partially answers some of the questions.
Yeah, I love it. Because I think you got back to what we were talking about initially around the vibe, right? Like culture is creating a vibe in a community. And regardless of what community you're in, you have to find it from the people that are the community, right? And so to get their buy-in, you need to know what they like and what they do and build healthy relationships. So in doing that, thanks for sharing that, Jaco. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how, let me see. Oh, I've got so many questions. So maybe we'll head over to Mallory and Katie. Daniel, I'll get back to you in a moment. I'd love to hear about how you gauge success when you're incorporating SEL. I mean, we heard so many incredible ways. I loved your words to live by, your adults being role models. So one team, one goal. Please, I'm on that team. So how do you gauge success with all of those incredible elements that you're working on?
Yeah, it's Mallory, I can start if that's okay with you, and you can, I'm sure you'll have more to add to it, but I think gauging success with incorporating SEL, it's complicated because, like we said, it's not something we can just check off of a list as, all right, it's completed. You know, we all got 100% in SEL for the day. You know, it's an ever developing set of skills that encompasses a lot. And preferably there's a person or a team that's dedicated to holding people accountable for incorporating SEL and finding kind of what fits each program or site or organization the best. You know, some best practices that we have at Wings, like I mentioned, we have program evaluations that are completed that are really focused around those SE competencies. We have kids surveys, our staff surveys, parent questionnaires like Mallory discussed to really hear from them and not just make assumptions about what's going on or what they need. Are just a couple of the things that we do at Wings to gauge success. Mallory, did I leave anything out?
Katie did a great job of giving a lot of the things that we do. In addition to that, we also really just look at the growth of our students and our staff. And you know, one thing that's really important is to understand sometimes when we're talking social and emotional learning, a lot of people confuse it with behavior. And so it is, you know, hand in hand. Okay, if this is a child that has a lot of problem behaviors, they need to be in this social and emotional learning program. But if there's someone who's not a behavior problem, but they don't need that. And so one thing that we really try to do in our programs is really get our staff to identify the strengths of students and see the successes of them. So maybe they are still a child that gets angry and upset and throws things in the classroom, but they also express their emotions now more too. Maybe they can say the emotion with it. And so now they're more self-aware, or maybe they're able to work well with others more. So really getting everyone to understand, one, it's an ever-longing process that we're learning. Even as adults, we still have skills that we can improve and work on. And so we can expect to see growth overnight, over a year sometimes within our students. And so how can we just identify those key things that we may see a growth in?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that really leads to another question that I'd love, Daniel, for you to start with, but others, please feel free to chime in because sometimes we do all these incredible things as an organization. We make all these efforts, and then we're not sure if it's making an impact, right, on our children. Or maybe we see a ton of impact and we're saying, wait, where did that come from? We're not sure all the factors that went into it. So Danielle, I'd love to hear a little bit, how does infusing SEL within the culture of an organization help with program impacts on youth within LA's Best? What have you seen of those program impacts?
Yeah, I think one of the things, one of the biggest things is also, it starts with us here. I think my vantage point at this point, because, you know, in leadership and, you know, being somewhat detached from this, you know, one step away from the site, I always first start and looking at everybody around us and how are we communicating? How are we connecting? How are we collaborating and working together? I think that's one of the biggest things. I think for me personally, it's been a journey. You know, we've infused a couple of things, whether it was Harmony, compassionate systems learning, and things of that nature, to really just hone in on how do we connect with each other and see each other beyond the surface, beyond our initial interactions, beyond, in sometimes some cases, the slights, the snubs, you know, the negative interactions, and being able to kind of go beyond the perceived you know, intent and all that. And so that's one of the things that, you know, I've seen the benefit as an organization, because what that then allows us to do is allows us to really, when we're working on our areas of expertise or areas of focus, whether it's myself and staff development and development of training for staff and new staff, or whether it's our director of Best Fit or director of digital learning and the programming they're developing and looking at resources for programming for staff, they're doing it from a more clear, caring, unfiltered lens of, you know, and being genuine about actually caring. Because it's hard to, you know, some people can, you know, are really good at compartmentalizing it all, but some people, you know, for example, myself, it's like, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm in a bad mood. And so if I'm developing a training in a bad mood because my colleague, you know, upset me because they didn't follow through on something, or because they asked me, you know, a very just kind of open question, whatever the case may be, right? And so when we're practicing it amongst ourselves and we're really true about it, you know, as I think it was Jake who was saying, it's like we have to actually do it ourselves. Then when we're developing the programming, when we're out there with the kids visiting the sites, when we're interacting with our site staff, we're doing it in a true, genuine way of caring, and not just caring for you, but caring for the organization as a whole. And then that leads to our staff, doing the same with our kids. They got to get along with each other, because it's hard to get along, with each other, with our students, if we can't get along with each other. And as I think it was Katie was saying, you got to model it. You can either teach them how to get along, or you can teach them how to not get along. And that's really, really important. But those are the kind of impacts that we've been able to see, is just in the interactions with our staff, with our students, especially in these past couple of years out coming off of the pandemic. As a field, we are really struggling with our staffing and all that. And so those are all the things that really, it mattered this time around a lot more, to not, get overwhelmed, or whatever the case may be. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It looks like Yaki wants
Can
to
I
chime in.
add-
Go for it.
Can I add to that too? You know what, as you're talking, Daniel, it makes me think of the, is it a Geico commercial that says about becoming our parents, right? I had put this in the chat, but children will do more of what we do than what we say, right? And so that whole commercial was playing on, our parents tell us a whole lot of things, but eventually we're going to become a little bit like our parents because of what we watch them do. And so in the case of SEL, they will do more of what we do than what we say do. We have to be able to walk the talk instead of just talking the talk, right? And the only way to do that is personally increase our capacity in our adult SEL capacity and become good models.
Love that. Thank you. Okay. I think it's time we check on some questions from the audience. And I do have one kind of big question for you all. So let me check in on the questions from the audience. And I want you to start thinking about this. This question is, what have been some of the biggest challenges with infusing a culture of SEL in your program? Are there common struggles you learn from the programs or sites that you might support in making SEL really feel palpable in their environment? Like they can feel it. So what are those challenges and struggles that you and your program or the programs you support, you've felt and help them move past? And audience, please type your questions in the chat box. We are monitoring and would love to bring them live to our panelists. So go ahead, whoever was ready to. Go
ahead. Two things for us. One has been just communication. At LA's Best, we're across 197 schools across LAUSD, and so thousands of staff, hundreds, thousands of students. And so one of the hardest things for us has been communication, just making sure that staff are aware of the resources that are available. And the support that's available. I think that's one of the key things. The second one has been just life this past couple of years. It's hard to practice SEL or show staff that we care for them when they're struggling with things that, as an organization, we're doing everything we can, but we're not doing, we're still not solving it all. And it's hard to care about other students when sometimes, I think from the staff's perspective, it may feel like the organization doesn't care about us. Because really, again, like I said earlier, like social emotional learning is just us remembering that we need to care about each other and not taking for granted the interactions that we have with each other, and the important, skills that are being developed in those interactions. And so, whether it's being short-staffed, whether being at a site that's being short-staffed, whether staff are feeling like they should be getting paid more, whatever the case may be. And a lot of the things, as an organization, especially for us as LA's Best, because we're part of LAUSD, a lot of things are out of our control. We're tied to the district and they're doing and the way they move. And so that's, I think, been the two challenges for us. It's just showing that we care, but without being able to sometimes really solve some of the issues and the challenges that our staff are having.
Oh, that's deep, Daniel. I feel like everything you've shared today has been deep, but showing that we care, even if we can't necessarily change the outcome, I think is a difficult and important lesson. And I say lesson loosely, but for all of us to really help kids and adults understand, right? We're here to care and build those relationships with them. And, we may have some power, but maybe not, right? And we're here with you in your community to support you. Would anyone else like to share? Go ahead, Yako.
Although I would say the two, there are lots of obstacles, but I would say for me, the two biggest there are two. One is a question that you already asked us, which is about buy-in, right? So buy-in from staff, right? Sometimes staff is just doing it because this is what they told us to do and this is why we're doing it, but they don't really think that social emotional learning is something that is useful and that is valuable. So sometimes I always like to include sometimes like statistics or things that are really going on. And I know we have to be careful about stats, right? But to try to include real world examples about how social emotional learning affects the real world. And I think somebody put something about that in the chat. Connecting the dots for people is sometimes very important to the children, right? So I would say that was one. And the other, and that's just a little bit on, I could go on, but the second also biggest culture is kind of the theme of why we're here today. The theme of this training is about culture. And to be honest with you, sometimes culture is the obstacle. Does that make sense? Sometimes you are fighting against a culture that would rather have you not be caring and kind and helpful to one another, which is why the good thing to me, though, is that you can be intentional about the culture that you create in your own space, right? So even though possibly the larger culture may be kind of fighting against children and adults being caring and thoughtful and empathetic and kind, you and some other like-minded people can get together and intentionally work on the culture of your building or your class or your space to be kind of the anti-culture if you need to be. That's just the truth of the matter. You can create it. And so I find that to be very hopeful. Like all of us together are like-minded and we can go back to our spaces and work on intentionally building culture that serves what we want to serve.
Thanks for sharing that, Yako. I think we have a question from the audience that I think it hits on some of the areas that you all are bringing up right now. And the question is, how do you reach out to the administration of programs who have stated that SEL is a part of the program they provide? However, there is little action from the top down that honors this commitment.
So I'll try to tackle this question first. I think this is sometimes a very tricky situation to be in when you're the person that's being told that you have to implement this program, this curriculum, but then there's a little support sometimes, or those people that are those administrators that may be telling you that may not be in the trainings, may not be in attendance, they may not come to see what's going on. There's different ways that you can go about that. First and foremost, I think it's just understanding, what your job and your role is, regardless of what the administrator may be supporting, regardless of what they may be attending. It's your students or what you're trying to help, and you can't really dictate or have a lot of say in what administrators are there supporting you or they're engaging in these trainings and these meetings with you. But I think also a lot of it is you speaking on the impact that the curriculum or the program may be having on your students. So if the administrators don't want to attend the meetings, they don't want to attend the trainings, okay, well, how can you share with them what you learned from it, the highs from what you learned? How can you share with them the strengths that you saw in your students? Invite them to your classroom to see, hey, I'm doing this lesson on teamwork with my kids. If they can't come, because we know that's sometimes an issue, okay, well, let me take some pictures and send an email to them so they can see it. So just finding different ways to reach out to those administrators. Maybe they don't want to come in your space. Well, how can you create opportunities where you can kind of give them that information and share with them in their space? And then hopefully you can get their buy-in. But if not, still just remembering and understanding, it's about what impact can you have on your students.
Really well said. Thank you, Mallory. I'm seeing the clock ticking. Anybody really want to answer that question? I have another great question that goes back to student success, and then I'm going to start to wrap us up. So this question is, what are ways that we can incorporate SEL in college and career readiness? Sometimes I find myself not being able to balance both and have a good outcome in the classroom. Any thoughts here? This is our goal, right? This is what we're driving all our kids to.
I can take a stab at it, or I can start the conversation. I think these social emotional skills are life skills, right? It's not something that we only teach to kindergartners and that's the only time they're building those skills. These are skills that we as adult professionals are using every day, both personally and professionally. So I think any way that you can integrate focusing on these skills is beneficial for college and career readiness. And so just making sure that, I don't think it has to be a whole different set of curriculum that you're integrating into what you're already doing for college and career readiness, but really making it relatable for your students and showing them how, they'll be using responsible decision-making in college when they have to decide to stay in and study for a test instead of doing other things. They'll have to learn how to work with others who might be different from themselves. All of these SE skills are things that are used throughout our lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Katie. I'm going to need to wrap us up. I'm very sorry, but I think what I would like to point to this, I think this gets back to the beginning of our conversation today, which is really, and Yako shared this in her piece around the workforce is looking for individuals with emotional intelligence and those social emotional skills. And so that's what we are all working towards is bringing these skills, the social emotional skills, to our staff and our students so that they can then create healthy and supportive cultures within their workforce, right? And within the places that they spend their time. So thank you so much to everyone that's been here. I will pass the baton back over to Maria to wrap us up. And much, much appreciation to our panelists today, to all the people who dialed in, who are part of this discussion. We know there's incredible work that you're doing in the field every day in all of our spaces to really make the world turn and help kids be successful. So thank you.
Yes, thank you to all of our panelists. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for taking time today to listen to all these amazing experts. Have a great afternoon.